On today's show, who are the top 5 defensive defensemen in the 2024 NHL Draft? We'll look at that on today's show on Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi, co-host of the Locked On NHL Prospects podcast and director of North American Scouting for Dauber Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down the top 5 defensive defensemen in the 2024 NHL Draft. Usually, Sebastian joins me for this kind of stuff, but unfortunately, he's in Europe right now. Time frames aren't working, so we're recording separately for this week. We'll break down the top 5 defensemen, and there are 5 honorable mentions as well on this list, which I'll break down as well. Before we get into any of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. If you're watching on YouTube, as always, remember to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you think of the rankings, what you think of the episode, all that good stuff. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day and leave us a rate and review. So let's get things started right away with the honorable mentions. And I want to start off with a pair of QMJHL defensemen in Spencer Gill and Thomas Lavoie. These are 2 really good, really reliable defensive defensemen who've spent the year in the QMJHL. In Spencer Gill's case, he is a 6'3", 180-pound right shot defenseman. He's been playing for the Rimouski Oceanic in the QMJHL. And he's been really interesting to watch. Really reliable heading into his own zone. He's been really good off the rush, but I really especially like his in-zone defending. He's a player who's proactive on pass receivers. So when he sees that a pass is going high to low, he's quick to get to that corner to stop that forward from making a play. And he's one of those QMJHL defensemen that still hasn't figured out the offensive side, how to carry pucks through the neutral zone, efficiently, but the defensive game is there. He's got a lot of maturity to his defensive game. He's got a good breakout pass, which, at the NHL level, usually you see those kind of players top out as third pair defensemen, but I think it's still worth a second, maybe third round pick based on the tools. He's got a lanky frame that he can add weight to as well to become even more efficient, but it's all in the brain with Spencer Gill. With Thomas Lavoie, you have kind of an opposite effect. He's 6'4", 225 pounds, also a right shot defenseman. He's been playing for Cap Breton in the QMJHL, and he's a good rush defender. He's a good skater. But his projection defensively really goes through the tools rather than the brain. With Lavoie, it's that gap closing ability, that massive reach that he has, that ability to kind of get in your face extremely quickly that makes him so effective. And that's kind of the difference between the two. But I did want to highlight those 2 QMJHL defenders because I don't think the QMJHL gets enough love. And this is a great opportunity to do so. Defensive defensemen are a specialty of that league, and Thomas Lavoie and Spencer Gill are right down that alley. Moving on to a USN TDP defenseman, we have Will Skahan, the towering left shot defenseman. He's been having an interesting season. The points never really came, but he's 6'2", 212 pounds, a US-born prospect, obviously. And again, with him, it's the aggression, it's the tools, it's that reach, that ability to close gaps with that skating ability. But I've grown a bit more fond of his passing ability. He's a player who can kind of connect with teammates across larger surfaces, but can also make a small 6-foot pass that kind of alleviates pressure and takes the focus away from him when he has a puck. He's really good at kind of diffusing situations. But with Skahan, you're getting a hyper-aggressive, hyper defensively capable defenseman. He's going to be the type of player who's going to throw you into the boards, who's going to punish you physically if you ever go on his side of the ice. I don't see enough composure or poise in his game in order to help him be a more effective puck carrier or puck distributor even. That passing ability is good. It's just that in the NHL, sometimes you need to hang on to pucks. Sometimes you need to zip them fast. With Skahan, it's zipping passes fast. There's no composure or hanging on to pucks. He sees an option, he hits it. That's it. That's simple. That's what makes Skahan actually so interesting, is that he has room to grow into these things. These are areas that are a bit more difficult to develop, and you'd rather have a prospect at the stage that already understands these concepts, like obviously Aziv Buyum, those kinds of prospects who understand the idea of hanging on to pucks and letting play develop, hitting the second or third or fourth option rather than the one that's right in front of them. With Will Skahan is much more the latter case, but he's still an interesting player, and again, a really good defenseman who makes the honorable mentions list. Moving on, I do want to highlight Zeev Buium because, contrary to what you read, oftentimes with these kind of profiles of players, these average-sized left shot defensemen, Zeev Buium is really, really good defensively. So let's start with a profile. Obviously, if you're watching this podcast, probably because you've heard the name already. But Zeev Buium is a 5'11", 165, 170-pound left shot defenseman. He played the entire year for the University of Denver, and he started off on their top pair. And you don't do that unless you're quite reliable and good defensively. If you're a freshman in the NCAA, and that is exactly what Zeev Buium is. He's reliable. He's calm. He's able to either get aggressive on carriers when the situation asks for it. So when the player's barreling down the ice and Buium knows he doesn't have the footwork or the speed in general in order to keep up with that prospect, he's going to close that gap early and force the forward to dump the puck in. That helps him kind of work off his defense partner, where his defense partner will slowly but surely understand these things and figure out what Zeev Buium is capable of and what his tendencies are. And the way he's been playing for Denver University, I mean, he played, I think, an average of 26 minutes a night. For a freshman in the SIAA, that's unheard of. He scored 50 points in 40 games, just absurd levels of production from him as well. But beyond that, I think really the defensive game needs highlighting. He doesn't make the official list, but I still think he deserved an honorable mention based on his play this season for Denver University, and it's well deserved. I mean, again, this is a player who controls gaps really well. This is a player who's really calm, but he's also able to get aggressive with you, and he toes that line extremely well. He's not as good of a in zone defender as he is a rush defender, but he's by no means a bad in zone defender. He's still capable of being proactive on puck carriers, being able to anticipate or identify the lanes that he needs to close quickly. With Zeev Buium, that's what makes him so interesting, is that he's not just a hyper-offensive, hyper-creative defenseman. He's a calm, composed, defensively responsible, reliable defenseman who just happens to be good offensively. That's why he's so highly ranked on a lot of rankings, and every single clip I've seen of him has just made me more confident in my projection of Buium as a future number 2, number 3 defenseman. He's got that upside. Last on the honorable mention list, though, we have Charlie Elick. Charlie Elick is a big 6'3", 200-pound right shot defenseman who's been playing for the Brandon Wheat Kings in the WHL. And Elick has been really interesting because at the start of the season, I really saw him as a pure shutdown defenseman who doesn't give much more than that. But as the season went on, you saw him kind of come out of a shell offensively. And I think a lot of that goes through his confidence and his skating ability. He quickly realized that he has the footwork to keep up with play and to track back if he gets a bit daring offensively. We saw that a bit more from him. But in terms of the defensive game, it's that punishing tendency. He's one of the most frequent hitters in this draft among defensemen. He's a player who loves to throw the body, who doesn't shy away from contact, who heads into board battles with the intention of putting a player on their rear end and skating away with the puck if he can. Now, it does lead to some sequences where he tries to go for the hit and then overcommits, leaves some space behind him, which is why he's on the honorable mentions list and just missed the top 5 cut. It was a real house crasher for me between the last honorable mention in Charlie Elick and the 5th pick we're going to talk about in just a second. But I think he still deserves some mention. He's a really interesting prospect, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's picked in the latter end of the first round. These guys usually go high. And that brings us to number 5, and that's EJ Emery. The fifth of our top 5 here. EJ Emery is a big right-handed defenseman who's been playing for the NTDP as well and in the USHL for the National Team Development Program, and his specialty is rush defense. It's not too complicated. He's probably the best rush defender in this draft outside of maybe one of the guys ahead of him in this ranking. That's his specialty. That's what he specializes in. I think the specialists still have their place in the NHL, and I think that EJ Emery does need to kind of put all his coins into one barrel there, given how good he is at that one thing. He's a super good skater, and he mirrors footwork so well in transition that I think that's going to be his bread and butter in the NHL. Does he become anything more than a bottom pair defender with that specialty? We'll see. Doesn't bring much offense to the table, but given how good he is at rush defending, I couldn't leave him out of this top 5. And that's our first segment done. We'll get into our second segment where we look at picks number 4 and number 3 and kind of break down the differences between the two players. We'll get into that in just a second, but just before, a word from our sponsors at Game Time. If you're looking to buy cheap tickets last minute to any event, Game Time is the best place to get them secured. Game Time is a great app in order to purchase tickets either the minute before the event starts or sometimes even an hour after the event starts. You can still get tickets over at Game Time. Myself personally, I went to a PWHL game in the playoffs. It cost me $30 per ticket. I was in and out, and very soon at 6 p.m. The game started at 7. At 6 p.m., I looked at my girlfriend and went, "Let's go to a PWHL game." By the time I got out of the metro to go to the game in Laval, my tickets were secured in my pocket, ready to go. So it's a great place to get them secured. They're obsessed with saving you money. They've got last minute deals, flash deals, zone deals. My favorite is a Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section in a row for less than what Game Time has to offer you, Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, super simple. You just create your account and use code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for $20 off. So download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Alrighty, so let's move on to picks number 4 and 3 in our top 5. We're going to work our way up to number 1 here. And the conversation starts here with Stian Solberg. Stian Solberg is a big left shot Norwegian defenseman. He's been playing in the Norwegian Pro League for the better part of the last 4 years. And he's 18, which, I mean, just baffles me, but he's really that good. The size is really impressive. Solberg is able to close gaps really effectively with that good skating as well. He's a really efficient rush defender, and there are so many skills that he has that translate well to the NHL. And we really saw that at the Men's World Championship where he played for Norway. He was their standout player for me. He was everywhere on the ice. He was handling NHL caliber forwards really, really well, surprisingly well at that level, and really kind of came out of a shell in that tournament. So he's 6 foot, 296 pounds. He's the December 05 birthday, so among the older players in the draft. But yeah, he's just got so much translatability to his defensive game. He mirrors footwork well. He keeps his head on a swivel. He's comfortable pivoting and rushing back to retrieve pucks behind his end. Once he secures them behind his net, he's able to break them out really quickly. All these little kind of details. There's a lot of fluidity to his defensive game. Everything's kind of chained together. He never stops doing anything, which is really what I was looking for pretty much the whole year with Solberg. And as the year went on, I got more and more confident in his ability to chain together defensive sequences, which is a very difficult thing to do even at an NHL level. That's usually the thing that stops defensemen from making the league at 20, 21, 22. That's why a lot of them end up taking until they're 23, 24 to kind of hit their to start seeing a bit more of what their ceiling is. So for me with Solberg, the fact that that's already there in this game is testament to how long he's been playing pro. But I still think that there are some limitations to his game. He's a player who's extremely violent. He's probably the biggest hitter in this draft. Just loves to throw the body, never shies away from contact, always looks for an opportunity to throw the body. But that actually takes him out of play sometimes. Like I said, he's always doing something. So once he goes into that hit, the moment he looks around, he's looking for his next option, what he needs to do next, what his next responsibility is. He's thinking forward, which I liked from defensemen, especially in their own zone, especially without the puck. That's something that I've really looked for all year with Solberg, like I said, and I've only gotten more confident in it. So I'd be absolutely shocked if this player isn't picked in the first round. This is a prospect who has NHL GM's hearts for sure. This is exactly what they look for from their defenseman. Solberg is right down NHL GM's alleys, and there are a bunch of teams in this kind of range, in the 15 to 25 range, that I think would be enamored with Stian Solberg and would be willing to pick him up really early. That brings us to number 3, and let's talk about Artyom Levshunov for a second. He doesn't make the top 2 for his defensive ability, and I'll get into why in just a second, but I want to break down what makes Artyom Levshunov such an efficient defenseman. First and foremost, a profile. He's a 6'3", 200-pound right shot defenseman. He's been playing for the Michigan State Spartans in the NCAA, a really good program, a surprisingly good program, but he was a big part of them becoming that efficient of a program. He's an October 05 birthday, so one of the older players in the draft, but he was a late commitment to the NCAA, pretty much last minute. But the year that he spent with Michigan State, he just got better and better and better with each game. And that's a testament to how hardworking of a defenseman he is. I mean, this is a prospect who, I know for a fact, puts in more work than almost anyone in this draft out off the ice. In training, in practice, he stays multiple hours after each practice to kind of work on his stuff. He's a very dedicated, very hardworking prospect, and NHL teams are going to love that. That's why he's projected to be in the top 3. It's not just the skills that he has, that frame, that reach, that mobility that he has, but also the effort, the work ethic that's there with Levshunov. And you can't see that for every prospect in this draft. He really has it in spades. But in terms of why he's not in the top two among the pure defensive defensemen in this draft, it's not just the fact that the two ahead of him are really good at what they do, but it's also because Artyom Levshunov still does have some hesitations when it comes to hockey sense, when it comes to anticipating play, decision making, that kind of stuff. I have a bit more questions regarding what Levshunov is capable of. But overall, I think the skill level with Levshunov really compensates for that. The tools really compensate for the lack of kind of mental sharpness that he has in this game. And he's learned how to use those tools better and better and better as the year went on, which I think has compensated really well for those lackings. So Levshunov, like I said, is an extremely mobile defenseman. He closes gaps aggressively and effortlessly. And I think in terms of skating foundations among the defensemen in this range, in the 2 to 10 range, the Sam Dickinsons, the Zane Pareks, the Booyams, and all that stuff, I think that Levshunov's foundation of skating ability is the best in this draft among that range, right? So the fact that he's able to use that better and better as the season went on is a testament to how he's been reworking his game. I think that this is a player who, I have no confirmation of this, but you don't get this much better at using a tool that you have if you're not watching video of yourself, if you're not rewatching your sequences and going through them and understanding why something went wrong when it went wrong. Because, like I said, as the season went on, Levshunov kind of came out of his shell, became a lot more efficient, became a lot less prone to big mistakes and gaffes and those kinds of problems. It was a big issue at the start of the season, but with every passing game, I just got more and more confident with what Artyom Levshunov is capable of defensively. On top of that, he started adding layers and layers to his puck skills. He started being able to cut to the inside off the boards. He started getting comfortable hanging on to pucks for a second, letting play develop, kind of like I was talking earlier with Steve Booyam. Levshunov started showing glimpses of that. It's not consistent enough, but it's still a start. You'd rather see it sometimes and not see it at all. And you're seeing it sometimes with Artyom Levshunov. So yeah, for me, the setback is to his defensive game. What keeps him out of the top two among defensive defensemen is the lack of processing, the lack of awareness, the struggles with hockey sense. But you got to keep in mind, a year and a half ago, this prospect was playing U18 hockey in Belarus. I've said this before on the podcast. U18 hockey in Belarus doesn't force you to think, doesn't force you to be proactive, to anticipate play defensively. If you're big, if you're mobile, if you're strong enough, you'll get through, you'll make it work. And Artyom Levshunov has all that and more, especially compared to his peers in that league. So the switch to the USHL there was a learning curve there, but I think he adapted fairly well. And the same thing happened in the NCAA. So this is a prospect who's shown that he's adaptable. I don't have much concern with him being picked in the top 3, top 4, top 5. I have defensemen that I prefer to him personally based on what my biases and preferences are, namely Zane Parek and Zeev Booyam are ahead of him in my rankings. But after them, for me, there's no doubt about it. Levshunov's the best pick available, and I would fully understand if Chicago, for example, picked him up at 2nd overall. That would make sense to me, honestly. They need a right shot defenseman. He's got that combination of safety and upside that I don't think you get from Parek or Dickinson or Booyam or the other guys in this range. So for me, Levshunov just makes a lot of sense to Chicago at 2. So even though he's 3rd on my list of defensive defensemen, I still think the tools are enough for him to be a top 3 defenseman in this class. And overall, a great option at 2nd overall. So that's a testament to how much more confident I've gotten Levshunov's projection, because in October and November, I had him in my teens and my 20s. So he's come a long way. But that's our second segment done. We'll get into our third segment. We're talking about picks number 2 and number 1. We'll finalize this list in just a second. But just a quick word from our sponsors first. Locked On NHL Prospects. Alrighty, so let's close things off with picks number 2 and number 1 on our rankings. We'll close off these rankings for the top defensive defensemen in the 2024 NHL Draft. And we have to start with Anton SIlayev. Now, this was a conversation at 2 and at 1, but Anton SIlayev ends up at 2 in my rankings. I'll get into why in just a second. It'll sound a lot like what you just heard about Artyom Levshunov, but for starters, SIlayev is 6'7", 210 pounds. He's a left shot defenseman. I mean, just a monster of a player, and the combination of size and skating is just unfair with SIlayev. It almost makes no sense when you watch him how well he skates for a 6'7" player. A lot of 6'7" players struggle to kind of bend their knees right. They struggle to get to kind of access their outside edges to be able to dig into the ice with good ankle flexion because they're carrying so much weight above their ankles. It makes it really difficult to keep a good posture. But it really seems like Anton Silayev's kind of body proportions are set up pretty much perfectly in order to help him dig into the ice well, to kind of engage his knees and his hips in his skating stride, and just eat a bunch of ice with each stride. It's ridiculous how much ice he covers. For me, he's got the upside to be the best gap closer in world hockey. I mean, if he develops the way that I think he can, Anton Silayev, I don't think there's any doubt that he can get there in terms of being the gap closing defenseman that I think he can be. He could be the best of that in the NHL. But a lot needs to go right in terms of his sense, in terms of his awareness. And that's what keeps him out of number one. But the tools are just out of this world. I mean, this is a prospect who was playing NHL hockey the entire year last season and wasn't on anybody's radars. He wasn't really a prospect who stood out massively outside of his size, but the way that he developed over the past year and the way that he joined Torpedo, which is a KHL team. Again, Anton Silayev played KHL minutes regularly this whole season. We're talking top 4 KHL minutes. It is for a program that's a bit more friendly to prospects. A lot of their players are pretty young, but still, it's really impressive to know that Anton Silayev, as an 18-year-old in Russia, played the whole season in the KHL in a top 4 role and did a pretty good job of it. But what keeps him out of the number one spot for me, like I said, is the hockey sense issues. I think that Silayev is about the opposite of Ziv Buyum, about as much the opposite of Ziv Buyum as you can get. Ziv Buyum is an undersized, composed defenseman who has offensive skill, and who relies on that composure and poise and awareness in order to defend. Silayev is a massive, mobile left shot defenseman who uses his tools to defend, but doesn't really understand the game, and especially lacks a bunch of composure in this game. This is a prospect who kind of disintegrates in front of you as soon as he's pressured. It's honestly quite funny to watch at times. This is a prospect who doesn't handle pressure well at all. But the tools, again, are the difference maker for me with Silayev. He's a prospect who, even though his understanding of the game isn't that well, I think with enough experience, with the experience he already has in a top 4 in the KHL, I think that it's just a matter of time before that gets at least up to average at an NHL level. I don't think he's ever going to be an above average NHL thinker, but Anton Silayev is too big, too mobile, and too rangy in order to not make the NHL in some capacity. And from there, it's just a matter of getting used to the speed, getting used to the pace, and all of a sudden you've got a fantastic gap closers who will make some mistakes, who will try to dump the puck out early instead of kind of handling pressure to ride off a check, that kind of thing. But again, I mean, you can't shy away from these players. They don't grow on trees, and everyone's calling him a unicorn. I don't think there can be 7 or 8 unicorns a draft. I don't think that's how unicorns work. But Silayev is definitely in the vicinity of unicorn status for me. He's quite unique in terms of how draft eligibles usually go. 6'7" players escape that well. I mean, we've seen Maverick Lamoureux before in this draft, but even he, I mean, he's a good gap closer. He's not as good as Anton Silayev, and his skating isn't as good as Anton Silayev's, even though I'm a big fan of Lamouroux's skating as well. So I think that's a comparable so far in terms of projection, in terms of the career projection as well. I think that's where Anton Silayev's heading, but still, like I said, this isn't a player who grows on trees. NHL teams are going to be big fans of him. I wouldn't be surprised if he's picked in the top 4, top 5, but we'll see how it goes on draft day. Last but not least, we'll talk about our number 1 pick on our defensive defenseman list for the 2024 NHL draft. The top defensive defenseman in the 2024 draft, in my opinion, is Sam Dickinson of the London Knights. He's a 6'3", 200-pound left shot defenseman who's played in the OHL the whole season, who impressed a lot for the London Knights. And the London Knights are a powerhouse. This isn't an easy team to crack the top 4 and become a top pair defenseman, a second power play defenseman, a top penalty kill defenseman. And Dickinson did it all this season, and that's due to how refined his defensive game is. Among defensive defensemen, I think the toughest thing that you need to learn as a defensive defenseman is the toggle between when do you go into the corner, when do you get aggressive, and when do you sit back and kind of let the play develop. I think without the puck, that's Sam Dickinson's biggest strength. This is a player who understands the defensive game extremely well, who understands how to keep pucks out of dangerous areas extremely well. He's always well positioned. He's either, defending the low slot, boxing out a player in front of the net when he needs to, or he's jumping onto the boards and battling for pucks, kind of swarming the puck carrier along with his team. He plays inside of structure and time inside of a system extremely well as well. So the polished elements to his defensive game are really what stands out with Dickinson. On top of that, Sam Dickinson is no slouch offensively. He's able to carry pucks up the ice. He's got fantastic skating, and he uses it liberally to get up the ice. He's often carrying pucks across the neutral zone and straight into the offensive zone himself. He doesn't really dump pucks that much in offensive zone transition. So this isn't a player who's going to skate the puck out of the D zone, kind of do a soft chip into the corner for his teammates to do the work. He's going to carry the puck in himself, and he has the tools to do it. But on top of that, I mean, for me, the offensive skill is there. He's got a booming shot from the point. That's why he's been playing on the second power plays, because of that shot. But he's also got some decent distribution. He's able to find seams. He's able to create seams as well at times. It's flashes, but he's still capable of doing it. And overall, for me, Sam Dickinson just has a bunch of hidden skill that I think could make him a really effective two-way defenseman. But if you're looking at pure defensive upside in terms of pure defensive value, he's still the best in this draft for me. Sam Dickinson has a lot to his game. The one setback with Dickinson is, again, composure, but I'd say with the puck, it's a lot more glaring than without the puck, which is a problem that SIlayev and Levshunov have, where they don't have much poise with the puck. They dump pucks early sometimes, they make mistakes sometimes, that kind of thing. They rush plays. Dickinson doesn't have that problem defensively, but he certainly has it offensively. This is a prospect who gets way too aggressive at times offensively and leaves some gaps, but whenever the play is within his reach, whenever the play is within his area of influence, Sam Dickinson is stopping it. You can rest easy on that. And he's also a big hitter. He's a prospect who loves to throw the weight. Especially, we saw that in the playoffs in the OHL, even in the Memorial Cup. This is a prospect that made it really difficult for teams to want to choose his side in transition. He kind of eliminates half of the ice in transition when he's on his game, because no one wants to go on his side. You're getting clobbered, and that's not fun. No one likes that. So that's what makes Sam Dickinson the best defensive defenseman in the 2024 NHL Draft. That's it for our episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rating review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports on YouTube's first 24/7 sports channel. And make sure to tune in for our next shows as we continue our prospect coverage for the month of June and set up for the 2024 NHL Draft at the end of the month. This is Hadi, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, and we hope to see you next time.